Welcome back. Today we're gonna watch a video by James Jani. He makes like really crazy Netflix-esque documentaries. I think I might have seen this one, but I've seen a few of his videos, like all of them, and they're all really like well made. So this guy's pretty awesome.
In 2003, professional boxer
Insane.
and heavyweight champion Mike Tyson filed for bankruptcy
We're gonna do a little ASMR. I'm gonna eat while we watch this.
with $30 million in debt, despite accumulating over $300 million during the course of his career, which poses a great question about money itself. Because a great deal of our actions or our motivations in life have an underlying desire or need to acquire it. But what's the point in acquiring it if the great issue seems to be with our ability to manage it?
This shit always like blows my mind that there are people who are making way more, because like once you start making money, your standard of living goes up. You buy more expensive cars, you buy bigger apartments or bigger houses, you go out to eat more. So you're like, it's called lifestyle creep, but your overall like standard of living goes up with the amount of money that you're making. So regardless of if you're making, you know, $1,200 a month or $10,000 a month, you're kind of lumped into this paycheck to paycheck because most people never learn about money management or how investing works or just saving in general and being able to manage things wisely. You'd think like someone that makes $10,000 a month would be able to manage their shit pretty well, but you'd be really surprised of how that works out for most people. So for us poor people, probably manage your money even better. And even though you're making less money, if you manage your money better than someone making more money, you're still gonna come up plus ahead of them.
Americans now have the highest credit card debt in history. Translation: you didn't learn anything!
Debt is an invisible burden being carried by the country's most vulnerable.
Of course, these statistics are reflective of the UK and the US, but consider for a moment your own attitude towards money and how money exists in your own life. What is money to you? Does it seem to enter your life and immediately leave once you have it? Has it ever placed you in a vulnerable position? A vulnerability that drew you closer to a get-rich-quick scheme or a guru telling you that you can get rich if you just bought their course? Whilst my entire channel aims to tackle these topics to some degree or another, I realize that our perceptions of money are sometimes more crucial than our ability to generate it, especially when our very brains are wired in such a way that prevents us from being financially sensible. Does it really matter if you're earning more than 6 figures a year if by the end of that year you have nothing left to show for it? Where is the disconnect?
Look at that shit. Nearly 1 in 10 workers making $100,000 paycheck to paycheck because they want to buy the Bentleys, they want the five car garage house. They're just stupid ass shit that you don't need. But the fact that you are able to buy those things and show you have status really makes you want to spend and acquire that status. Once you like start feeling feeling good from how people perceive you because of like your wealth, then you're gonna keep spending that way because it's what makes you happy. But sometimes you just gotta find a hobby, and spending money shouldn't be your hobby.
It's time we solved that mystery. And not only that, but explore a better framework for understanding money, a framework commonly taught in personal finance, but
And also, people that like acquire a lot of debt, there's like good debt that it builds equity while you have that debt. So let's say you get a low interest rate like house or a loan for a house. Buy a house, your house more than likely accrues value while your house accrues value faster than your debt accrues interest. So your equity is going up because your house is accruing more value. Of course, there could be a crash and your house depreciates in value while you still have that big loan, but that's the risk you're willing to take, right? But then there are people that accrue debt and they buy things that depreciate in value. So let's say you want a Tesla really bad, you get debt for it, you buy a Tesla, and as soon as you buy that Tesla, the value goes down. Right now, everyone's like, oh, my used car is worth more than a brand new car. That's because there was a shipping issue, a global shipping issue, where people couldn't get materials, so the used car retained more value just because there wasn't enough materials to make new cars. But at some point, that's going to equalize, and no matter what or how you feel about a vehicle, unless it's a super luxurious vehicle, even those, most vehicles don't retain value. So your debt to asset ratio is heavily weighted on debt. And that's just like one example that where most people accrue debt from buying clothing, food, and other necessities. Food's pretty, necessary, but you don't need to buy a steak every week. Um, so they accrue debt to things that just disappear and don't get them assets or equity in exchange for that debt that they're accruing. So they're gonna owe a lot more money than the money that they could potentially be making with that debt, because you can make money with debt.
Oftentimes missed in formal education. A question. What is money? Or rather, what does money represent? When you make a purchase from Amazon, when you're paid for your time working at a job, what is the significance of money in these transactions? Money is commonly defined as a medium of exchange, an instrument that facilitates the sale, purchase.
Money? Huh? Money is the equivalent of transferring your time into physical asset. I'll be right back. I'm gonna pause this. Okay. Let's
Or trade
try to
of
watch
goods
this.
between parties. But I don't think this says much about what money actually represents. I think a better way of looking at money is an expression of value. You hand over a certain amount of money to purchase something because you perceive its value to be equivalent to the amount of money that you handed over. Of course, the price is often not determined by you as an individual, but the market as a whole. But hone in on this one point. Money equals value. Why is that so important? Because often we give money a moral significance.
Quote that I'm sure you've heard: money is the root of all evil.
We look at someone who seems to have a large amount of wealth and think, they got lucky. Who did they take advantage of to get to that position? Who had to lose in order for them to gain? And never, what value was created in order to generate that money? Understanding that money is simply value is the best way to understanding that money is not necessarily evil, nor does it make a person evil. Sure, there are things such as scammers who convince you that what they have to sell is worth value, but that doesn't say much about money more so than it does their own morals.
So he's like equating money to like how much value you're inputting into society. So that would like work well with like if it was just a person that was a farmer who makes an item and his goods cost this much because that's how much value he's putting into the world. And it gets a little bit more convoluted when it goes towards like a corporation. But if you equate money as the time equivalent, because if everything was equalized, the only thing that'll fluctuate is time, right? If you think that your time is worth $15 an hour, that's how much you're gonna work for. And if you look at everything else that you're buying in that same equivalent, and you want to buy like a brand new Xbox, and you know it's gonna cost you like 45 hours of work, would you be okay with that? Right? Now, if it was just one person and one time, you're kind of like stopgap, right? Like you can only really make so much money as one person. So what ends up happening is that you would start up a business and you would employ multiple people, and you use their time to make money. So let's say the maximum output would be like, for every hour they work, they could produce $100. So that's 10 people, 10 hours, make $1,000. And that $1,000, 100 could go to them and 900 goes to you. So now your 1 hour is worth $900 and their 1 hour is worth $10. And you're making more money per your time spent. But if you equate that to value, you kind of get into like a moral ground of like, is this good? Is this bad? But if you do it to something that kind of everyone has a concept of, which is time, then you can equate it to where, is that okay for me? Am I willing to spend so much of my time? Because you can equate it, like the amount of time that you're living in on Earth is right now what, like 83 to 85 years is like usually where they think the life expectancy is. So you can go from 18 years to 85 years and equate the amount of hours in that time and cut it in half for the amount of hours you're sleeping, and that the rest of hours you have is your waking moment of where you could have to change it to family, friends, school, leisure, and working. And in that working spot is where you have to put your hours, your money per hour. And if you're not making money in other places where if you're like leisurely, passively making money, like YouTube, everyone like loves YouTube, right? Because you can make a video, and if it pops off or your channel pops off, then that's like another stream of income that you don't have to worry about because it's making money while you're sleeping. So in that moment of you sleeping, you're producing money. You're like, you're not using up your time. You're like, your time sleeping is not being wasted. So it's kind of went in a circle, but money is time. And to make more money, you need to be efficient with time.
Money simply opens your options and broadens your horizons. The choices you make with that money have everything to do with your own moral dispositions. So, money is an expression of value. Now what? How does this change the reality of a person living paycheck to paycheck or someone who is consumed by credit card debt? The simple mention of money equals value changes nothing. It may make me see money in a different light, but what part of that is actionable advice? To answer that question, I'll pose to you another question. What is your relationship with money?
You can't store
Money
time
will
in
come
money
into
though.
your life and it will leave. This is a relationship that is often expressed by your income and expenses. Another practical way of expressing this, which I particularly like, is your production versus your consumption. For the most part, money will enter your life because you have produced some form of value. And for most of us, this value will come in the form of labor, a job. Money will leave when you have consumed something, a Netflix subscription, a new car, a house. In many ways, we can look at the net worth of an individual as a metric for determining their relationship between consumption and production. Now cast your mind back to those statistics I mentioned at the start of this video. What part of the consumption versus production relationship do you think is at fault here? Consider yourself for a moment. Think about all the money that has entered your life.
We
and
consume
how much
way
of that
too
do you
much,
still have
bro.
in possession today or invested into some sort of asset? And which part of this relationship do you feel is unbalanced or needs improving? The likelihood is both. But for most of us, the biggest issue lies in our consumption. Remember the Career Builder study that found that 78% of American workers were living paycheck to paycheck? Well, it also found that of the workers
Forgot my
who
water.
made $100,000 or more a year, 1 in 10 of them were living paycheck to paycheck. Now you could argue that someone earning 6 figures a year may still like to earn more, but when you are paid a figure that is well above the average wage and the cost of living, and yet you still somehow find a way to spend,
That's almost 3 times a livable wage in America. Right? 30K is about what people make in retail and um, fast food and all that shit, 30K. You're making 100K, making 3 times the amount that someone else is making.
And it all, I'd argue that your relationship with consuming must be fixed before you even consider your relationship with production. As any wealthy celebrity who has filed for bankruptcy can show us, production means nothing when you have a problem with consumption.
Got a problem, you gotta fix it. But it's hard to like get told that you have that problem. Like, why would you listen to them?
A rat race, an endless, self-defeating or pointless pursuit. Sometimes the rat race is conflated with working a 9-to-5 job. It's a comparison often used by certain individuals to guilt you into buying programs and books for them. But this seems extremely unfair, mostly because it aims to villainize a job and excludes the fact that there are those who...
You watch any like economic channel and they're gonna be sponsored by like Skillshare or like a fucking Bitcoin company or some crypto wallet shit, and they're gonna try to get you to use their stuff because they get a percentage of whatever money you put in, and and they also get money for like every individual that goes in on their code. So they're on the production side of being efficient with their time, passive income. But they also have like, you know, their own courses, whatever the case is. Some of them I'm sure are good, some of them are bad, but you can literally attain any information you want online. Like that's what I'm trying to show you with all these videos that I'm watching. Any information ranging from fucking conspiracies to economics to science to animals. Like if you want to be a biologist, you could just do that online. You can watch everything you need to watch. From go Google a syllabus for a class, and you can go point by point and find that online.
either love or are perfectly fine with their jobs or have other aspirations aside from their 9-to-5. A real rat race is one that is living on a financial edge, being one paycheck away from broke constantly. A feeling as though the moment money enters your life, it immediately disappears. And the more responsibilities you have, the more dangerous this relationship becomes. The loss of a job, an unexpected health accident, or any unexpected circumstance for that matter can throw your entire financial position into turmoil. And consider the mental consequences of living on this financial edge. Your job no longer becomes an option. It becomes a necessity in order to keep funding your lifestyle or to keep paying off debt. To quote Tyler Durden from Fight Club, the things you own end up owning you.
This is why I don't get people that have to have like the newest clothes every season or the newest car, and like they'll lease out their cars. They won't buy a car, they'll just straight up lease it so they can, you know, change it next year. All these materials start owning you. And at that point, money also owns you. Gotta find something you want to do that's free.
What's the silver lining? It
Or
doesn't
at
have
least
to
free
continue
enough
like
to
that.
you.
The first stepping stone in personal finance will have you drawing an awareness to your relationship with money. This is often done by journaling your monthly expenses, categorized as housing, transportation, food, utilities, entertainment, and so on. It's about understanding yourself as a consumer, but this part is tough. In behavioral finance, this feeling can often be labeled as the ostrich effect, which is our tendency to want to avoid negative financial information. It's that feeling you get when you refuse to look at your bank account after a night out, fearing what it might show. And yet once you pass this stage, it's time for you to take control over your behavior as a consumer. This often involves the idea of budgeting, deciding each month how much you aim to spend on each of these categories and sticking to it. It's about systematically looking at what you consume and finding ways in which you can minimize these things to ultimately live below your means. In other words, having a lifestyle that still leaves you with enough money to save and invest in some form or another. It's also important to note that before you ever decide to invest, one of the most common practices in personal finance is to keep an emergency fund, a specific amount of savings that you hold on to in case of an emergency. This fund would typically hold 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. The idea, however, of living below your means is an important one. Because why would we choose to do otherwise? Why would we choose to live a lifestyle that we cannot afford, or one that places us on this financial edge? I could make an entire video on our cognitive biases. The ostrich effect is just one of which can affect your financial position. Then there's hyperbolic discounting, a tendency to favor short-term rewards as opposed to greater rewards in the future. This is you choosing to purchase a new pair of shoes instead of saving that money towards a future investment. Or there's social proof, our tendency to think and act as others around us think and act. When the people around you are buying one thing, you buy it too. Or when the people around you establish money as a means of evil, you're likely to assume the same thing too. The phrase, keeping up with the Joneses, summarizes this great problem of consumption. It's a phrase defined by Google as trying to emulate or not be outdone by one's neighbors. They buy a new Porsche, you buy one too. They have nice clothes.
This fucker has a Porsche. I'm buying a Porsche. What if you don't have Porsche money? Why would you buy a Porsche? What's wrong with a Honda?
You get some too. They renovate their home, you do it too. All in the attempt of impressing or trying to keep
Like
up
that
with
Borat
others
scene?
due to some form of social
He
pressure.
cannot
Only
afford.
in today's world, the Joneses are not literal neighbors. They're far more present than that.
We are all vulnerable to social approval. We really care what other
I don't use
people
social
think
media.
of us.
I mean, YouTube's kind of like a social media, right? But use it for education and bullshitting.
Governor of the Bank of Canada stated it succinctly. For most Canadians, debt is a fact of life, at least at some point.
To be clear, I'm not saying that purchasing an expensive piece of clothing, jewelry, or sports car is a bad thing, nor do I think consuming is a bad thing. The aim of this video isn't to philosophize about the repercussions of a materialistic view of the world. It's about drawing an awareness to who you are as a consumer. Do you care more about appearing as though you have money or actually having money? The rat race isn't about working a 9-to-5 job, but living life on such an edge that it means that you are chasing the next thing, whether a paycheck or a material possession, such that your greater life goals and ambitions are
That new
placed in the
PS5,
background
bro.
in order to continue
Chasing
this
that
race.
shit.
A budget and keeping account of your expenses have proven time and time again to work and draw you out of this race. It's fun to talk about making money or imagining having as much wealth as possible, but what's the point when your relationship with money as a consumer means losing it all or having to work non-stop in order to fund that lifestyle? That is the real rat race.
I don't really understand people that just like save money and they're saying they're saving money to like, you know, retire early or to not work when they're, you know, 60, retire at like 55 instead of 65. Why wouldn't you just spend the money now? How do you know you're going to be alive at 55? Like, how do you know you're going to be alive at 65? If you don't even know if you're going to be alive tomorrow. So, if you're being responsible, I think your money that you're saving should be used on that whatever you want to do in the future, you should just do it like now, like sooner rather than later. So if you're saving because you want to travel when you're 50 with your kids who are going to be like 20 years old, why don't you go and do a mini vacation now? Why don't you go spend some of that money that you have saved, not all of it, be reasonable, and go on a vacation, go on a small trip, do the things that you're saying that you want to do in the future now.
But with all of that being said, let's talk about making money.
Now, the stuff we teach here and have
Make
for
money while
almost
you're
30
sleeping.
years is proven.
What's up, you guys? It's Graham here. So we got to take a moment and talk about what's going on in the stock market, because as we're finishing up the week, stocks are
Personal finance channels like Graham Stephan or Dave Ramsey are great for learning how
They all
to
got
work
courses,
on the
right?
consumption side of the equation. But if there was one thing I wish they spoke more about, it would be their ability to make money. And I understand why they don't do this. It's easier to reduce your expenses and the amount that you consume than it is to increase your income. When speaking to a mass audience, giving the advice that will work for most people is typically the best choice. We see that there are entire communities built up around focusing on frugality. The The FIRE community is one example of this, a movement that adopts the strategy of living extremely frugally, saving and investing as early as possible with the intentions of retiring as
Fire
early
people
as
are
possible.
built different, bro.
Minimalists also share a similar view to the FIRE community, although more deep-rooted in philosophical positions about the world and materialism at large. People like Graham Stephan or Dave Ramsey promote strategies that fall in the spectrum of living frugally, saving a lot of money, and investing in the long run. And there's nothing inherently wrong with this strategy. It works for a wider range of people with varying degrees of income. But let's be honest, Graham Stephan doesn't rely on cutting coupons or living an incredibly frugal lifestyle to be making $100,000 to $200,000 a month from YouTube. Nor does Dave Ramsey rely on these strategies to have an estimated net worth of $55 million. These people are utilizing a means of production at mass scale. In my video, The Untold Truth About Money, I talked about money being equivalent to your perceived value in the market, and the most impactful way of increasing your value is finding a problem in the market, creating a solution for that problem, and selling that solution to the market at scale. This is
the other version of this for like, this is like an individual, right? You create a solution for a problem, but when you're like a big corporation or like, I don't know, a country, you create the problem and then give them the solution. It's fucking genius.
The entrepreneurial route. A successful business at scale is able to produce a large amount of value to a society such that your production side of the equation grows exponentially in comparison to a standard job. But this isn't a route that everyone can take, nor should they try to. It's about reflecting on your own capabilities and whether entrepreneurship is best suited to your direction. With that being said, increasing your production doesn't have to just come from the strict definition of a business. Graham Stephan uses YouTube as a vehicle to produce something, in this case videos about
Maybe that
personal
scared me.
finance at mass scale. It's one reason that I chose to create videos on YouTube as well. It's a vehicle to produce something, in this case documentary style videos at a mass scale, to a point where I can now do it full time and build a business around it. Producing is about providing relative value to the market in some shape or form. I utilized my skills with acting, presenting, storytelling, and video editing to create videos that I hope to be
So
somewhat
skillful.
entertaining and educational.
You okay? Maybe tweaking. Like this guy's so good. Like what he's talking about, like production is invaluable, and I don't got those skills. You gotta realize what skills you have to leverage, but if you don't have the skills, that's okay too. You can like figure out other ways. You don't have to make money off of everything you do. Sometimes you can just do something to do it, you know?
And thankfully, the
Maybe it makes
market
you feel
responded
happy or
positive.
fun,
Your form
keeps
of
you
production
busy.
may be developing an app or software that is solving a problem you believe the market would pay money
if you're gonna
for
make
its
money,
solution.
then you
Or
gotta,
perhaps a
you know,
fitness brand that is
put
branded
in the work.
extremely well and utilizes its community better than most other fitness brands, as I believe is the case with Ben Francis and what he did with Gymshark. For most people, labor in the form of a standard 9-to-5 job will be their means of production. But this doesn't mean that your ability to produce stops there. Understanding yourself as a producer is about understanding ways in which you can produce value to the market. If you can produce value at a large scale, then it means earning money at a large scale. The internet has thankfully provided a great deal of opportunity for us to be able to produce something and put it out to the market. Whether the market actually wants what you have produced can only be determined once you've released whatever it is that you've produced. So, to summarize, it's first important to bring awareness to yourself as a consumer, understanding what you purchase
Music is
and
so
why you
intense,
purchase
bro.
by journaling your consumption and then giving yourself a budget to manage and control that consumption. Producing then becomes a matter of maximizing the amount of value you can bring into society through a job, a business, or some other means of production. This is a framework that has helped me greatly, as I'm sure it's helped countless others who have a vested interest in making money.
You could add up to something big. Like this isn't just sushi we're talking about anymore. Like this is substantial. Yeah. And then to go from that to like this.
Focusing. Is that $170,454?
Insane.
That's insane.
What is this? Conclusion? No. So like the thing he was talking about, like production and scale, to make a large amount of money. You can also do that in smaller scales where it doesn't need your attention. So that's why there's a bunch of people that do shit like drop shipping, So, cause like there's ways that you make money that needs your full attention. So you work a 9 to 5. You need to be there 9 to 5. That's could be a corporate job. It could be an Uber driver, a taxi driver. Like someone that works at a restaurant. Like that's one form of making money, and you need to be there. And there's the passive form of making money, such as YouTube, where while you're not working, because you can't make it at work, right? So while you're not working, as your leisure time or your family time or all these other times that'll be getting cut into, you'll be producing a video and making a video that you put out there that hopefully makes you passive income. But then there's things that you can do while you're making a video or you're working at a job, such as investing your money in a corporation that you believe in and buying some of their stock and being a part owner, where that stock gives you dividends or it gains, value while you're just living your life. And there's also other forms of investing like that where you give people, like certain people, you be an angel investor where you give, an entrepreneur money and you get a stake of that company. It's not really a stock, it's just a stake because I mean eventually that becomes a stock, but at a conception it's stake or percentage of the company. They'll later, once they go private or they issue stock or whatever the case is, however they trade back to you, then you get value from that, from money that you had sitting out, right? But it's like I feel like it's all about just figuring out other ways of being productive. Like you don't have to do it in such mass scale. You can open up an Etsy shop and you could get, um people buying your stuff from Etsy, and then you would, deliver those things on the weekends, right? Like it doesn't have to be necessarily just one thing in a really grand big scale. You can do a lot of little things that becomes one massive big thing, like your own little network of how you make your money. But that's if you're really interested in making a lot of money. But if you're not and you kind of just want to, vibe, then live your life, paint, do something cool.